Norway, a country where the sun refuses to set for 2.5 months straight, then vanishes almost completely for just as long. A place nicknamed the Edge of the World, where kids are taught wilderness survival before they're taught cursive, where you're more likely to pass a reindeer on the road than get stuck in traffic, where convicted criminals get sent somewhere that looks like a boutique hotel. Winters in the Arctic interior can plunge past -30 degrees Celsius, and yet every year, thousands of people fly in on purpose, just to freeze under a sky that glows green and violet. This is a country that mastered electric cars before almost anyone else, while building one of the largest fortunes on Earth doing the exact opposite, selling oil. Let's go inside Norway. Norway sits in northern Europe, part of Scandinavia, with the North Atlantic on one side and Sweden, Finland, and Russia on the other. At around 385,000 square kilometers, it's close to the size of Germany, but home to only about 5.5 million people. Roughly 70% of the country is mountains and glaciers, scattered across more than 500 islands and thousands of lakes, with a coastline touching 3 separate seas: the North Sea, the Norwegian Sea, and the Barents Sea. Norwegian is the main language, written in 2 official forms, Bokmål and Nynorsk, while Sámi holds official status in parts of the north. Oslo is the capital. Bergen and Tromsø are usually named the most beautiful cities. Most of Norway's population descends from Norse settlers of the Viking Age, the same seafaring culture that raided, traded, and settled across Europe over 1,000 years ago. But the Vikings aren't the country's oldest story. Far to the north live the Sámi, an entirely separate indigenous people. Rock carvings on Norway's Arctic coast show Sámi ancestors were already living there roughly 10,000 years ago, long before the Viking Age began. Their homeland, Sápmi, stretches across northern Norway, Sweden, Finland, and part of Russia. Reindeer herding is the tradition most associated with the Sámi, and it's still legally reserved for Sámi families in Norway today, even though only a small share of Sámi still work as herders. Norway has its own Sámi parliament, representing a people whose language and culture predate the Vikings by thousands of years. Norway's economy runs on oil, gas, fishing, and hydropower, and it shows. This is one of the richest nations on the planet by almost any measure. Instead of spending the oil money, the government banks it. Norway's sovereign wealth fund, built from decades of petroleum revenue, is the largest of its kind on Earth, worth more than $1.5 trillion, and it quietly owns a sliver of nearly every major public company in the world. Despite exporting oil at massive scale, Norway is also a global leader in electric vehicles, with the large majority of new cars sold here now fully electric. Here's a scene playing out right now. Norway is at the World Cup for the first time since 1998. Erling Haaland is scoring for fun. Martin Odegaard is running the midfield. And thousands of Norwegian fans have flown across an ocean to watch every match in person, a run that's already carried them past Brazil into the quarterfinals. For a country of just 5.5 million people, that's a serious number of expensive flights and tickets. Ask Norwegians how they afford it, and healthcare and education come up constantly. Healthcare isn't technically free. There's a copay on visits and prescriptions, but it's capped at only a few $100s a year. Hit that cap, and everything else is free for the rest of the year, no matter what happens to you. Higher education works similarly for Norwegian citizens. Public university is essentially free, just a small student welfare fee each semester, with no 6-figure loans waiting at graduation. Take away medical debt and student debt, and there's simply more left over for flights to New Jersey to watch your team beat Brazil. Despite being surrounded by EU neighbors, Norway has never joined. Voters rejected membership twice by referendum, in 1972 and again in 1994, both times by a narrow margin, largely over fears of losing control of fishing and farming to Brussels. Instead, Norway joined the European Economic Area, which gives it access to the EU's single market without a seat at the table where the EU's own rules get written. It's part of the passport-free Schengen zone too, so travel between Norway and the EU feels seamless. It's often called one of the closest relationships to EU membership a country can have without actually being a member, helped along by the fact that its oil wealth means it's never needed the EU's money to get by. Norwegians have a legal right most countries don't: the right to roam. It means anyone can hike, camp, forage, and fish across most of the countryside, public or private land, as long as they treat it with respect. That everyday person ethos runs all the way to the top. During a fuel crisis in 1973, King Olav V famously rode the public tram through Oslo like any other commuter, no motorcade required. The royal family's down-to-earth reputation even extends to its mascots. The King's Guard has an honorary penguin colonel at Edinburgh Zoo in Scotland, a king penguin named Niels Olav, who's been formally knighted and promoted through the ranks since the 1970s. Skiing, hiking, and fishing aren't hobbies here. They're daily life, which is part of why Norway lands near the top of global happiness rankings year after year. Norwegians didn't just adopt skiing, they may have invented it. Rock carvings on the island of Rødøy, showing a person on skis, date back roughly 4,000 years. That history shows up on the Olympic podium. Norway has won more Winter Olympic medals than any other country on Earth. In the fishing village of Henningsvær, there's a tiny football pitch wedged between the sea and jagged mountain peaks, built for local kids. And in summer, when midnight still looks like daylight, matches are played there under the sun at midnight. Some Norwegian rules are delightfully unusual. Buying alcohol from a regular store on a Sunday is against the law nationwide. The prison system runs on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Halden Prison has been described by international media as looking more like a boutique hotel than a jail, with private rooms, forest views, and almost no bars in sight. And in a nod to Norway's role in global diplomacy, the Nobel Peace Prize is the one Nobel Award not handed out in Sweden. Its ceremony is held every year in Oslo instead. Far north sits Svalbard, an Arctic island group so cold that permafrost keeps almost anything from decomposing, which is why burials there stopped decades ago. You'll often hear that polar bears outnumber people here. That's actually a myth. Svalbard has around 2,700 residents and roughly 270 bears, so people outnumber bears about 10 to 1. Still, it's one of the only places on Earth where a bear encounter is a genuine, practical concern for anyone stepping outside town. Svalbard is also home to the global seed vault, a frozen backup of the world's crops, holding more than 1 million seed samples in case of global disaster. Because of its Arctic position, the northern half of Norway gets the midnight sun, weeks of continuous daylight each summer, followed by the polar night, weeks of near total darkness in winter. The far south sees neither extreme. That darkness is exactly when the northern lights put on their best show, best viewed from places like the Lofoten Islands, drawing visitors from every continent hoping to see the sky turn green, blue, and violet. Norway's fjords are the real showstopper. Deep, glacier-carved inlets slicing through cliffs and mountains. Sognefjorden, Norway's longest and deepest fjord, stretches more than 200 kilometers inland, while Fjord, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is often called the most beautiful of them all, framed by waterfalls including the famous Seven Sisters. For thrill seekers, Trolltunga, Troll's Tongue, is a thin slab of rock jutting out roughly 700 meters above a lake, reachable only after a grueling 10 to 12-hour round-trip hike. Up at North Cape, mainland Europe's northernmost point, a giant globe monument marks the spot where the midnight sun and polar night both perform at their most dramatic. And underground, the Lærdal Tunnel, the longest road tunnel on Earth at 24.5 kilometers, is lit in sections of blue and gold designed to mimic a sunrise, so drivers don't lose their sense of time in the dark. Norway isn't just cold mountains and Vikings. It's a country of contradictions. Oil wealth funding a green future, a Viking past sitting alongside a 10,000-year-old indigenous culture, strict rules paired with total freedom to roam, and enough left in people's pockets to fly across an ocean for a football match. If a place like this is on your list, drop it in the comments, and subscribe for more places that feel almost too strange to be real.